Welcome to the True Demon Lord show. I am, of course, the True Demon Lord Franco, and today we are talking about the Legion of Excess, and we are going into a deep dive where we're going to talk about the detachment rule, the enhancements, and the stratagems, giving you some tips and advice on using the detachment, and my opinions personally on it as well. So, if you watched the first deep dive, that was on the Scintillating Legion, Zinch, which was my favorite. And you'll kind of know how this is going to work. We're just going to deep dive into the detachment as a whole, and this will be part one. Then we will have a part two, which will be exclusive for my True Denizens members. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out. And that's going to be more of a tactical demonstration. So I'm going to show you how to use, um, you know, different abilities, the stratagems, and the detachment rules in game, and just some of the best ways to kind of get the most out of them. So, like in the last one we did for the Scintillating Legion for part two, I showed you some really good ways to use the Fickle Fire stratagem, as well as some tips on using the Infernal Puppeteer enhancement for the Lord of Change. And in this one, I will show you the best ways to jank about with the seductive gambits, as well as some of the other stratagems and all that kind of stuff. So, if that's something you're interested in, you want more of a tactical deep dive from, a pretty experienced and top demon player like myself on demons, and check out the True Denizen members because that's where I will give you a lot more tactical, in-depth style content. Otherwise, if you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. It's very much appreciated. It helps the channel grow. Almost at 1,000 subscribers. That was the first goal was 500 before the end of the year. We did that a while ago. So I set myself, could we hit the 1,000? I don't think we're going to quite do it by the end of the year, but we're only about 75 off. So to be honest, 1,000 subscribers, or nearly 1,000 subscribers in 8 months is insane, and I'm really appreciative of all the support everyone gives me. So, get all that soppy stuff out the way with. Let's get straight into it. So, honestly, I really like this detachment. I think it's the Scintillating Legion is my favorite because it, as a really big Zinch fan, Zinch being my favorite of the gods and my favorite set of demons, I I really felt like it encapsulated Zinch really, really well, and it is a really fun detachment. This, though, on multiple aspects, is probably my favorite outside of my personal bias, because it's got some really good, powerful rules to it. I feel like it really captures again the essence of the god, while also actually having fun rules, like interactive, creative rules, which I really, really like. So, the Legion of Excess, you have a two-part detachment rule, which I really like because, let's be real, we have the Shadow of Chaos as our army rule. At this point, with these four detachments, it's more of a bonus than anything. I see the detachment rules as the actual army rules, and then the Shadow of Chaos as like the detachment rule ish. So the fact that we got actually like a two-parter here was really, really nice. So we've got Beguiling Aura, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is fallback in charge, which is really, really good. I think anyone who had a brain knew Sinesh and predicted anything was going to go with either advance in charge or fallback in charge. I was more hedging on advance in charge, as like an overall thing. But advance in charge, fallback in charge is still really, really good for a couple of reasons. First of all, it works incredibly well with the next part of the detachment rule, which we'll get into in a minute. But also, like, people were able to chuck in 10-man units into like a keeper, and maybe the unit has an invuln, like a 5-up invuln or something, and then they've tagged your keeper down and she can't move and it's annoying. Or Shalaxi, they chuck in a big unit that's not got characters into it, or just a massive unit in general, again tag her down, or just throw multiple things. So the fact that you can just fall back, not be stuck, and then charge somewhere else is really, really nice. Now, this also combines with the stratagem we'll talk about later. But yeah, fallback in charge I actually think is really, really good. And again, it combines with the other rule, Seductive Gambit, very, very well. So Seductive Gambit, after one of your Legion, or after a Legion SD Monica Slanesh unit from your army completes a charge, you can choose to do a Seductive Gambit for the rest of the turn. So you will lose any fights first ability you have. and instead gain full rerolls to hit and wound. That's really, really strong. Now, here's the key bit, because you're not losing the charge bonus. And of course, I want to mention this because I'm seeing a lot of this come up at the moment. I've had a lot of people say this to me as well. And I don't think many people know actually what the charge bonus is. I think a lot of people are thinking the charge bonus is any kind of bonus you get on the charge. Like, I'm having people tell me, like, anything that you would get on the charge would be classed as a charge bonus, whereas actually no, the charge bonus is a defined thing. As per the rulebook, the charge bonus is specifically fights first on a turn in which you charge. Now, obviously, when you heroically intervene, you don't get the charge bonus, and there are some other instances in the game where you don't gain charge bonus from charging for wherever it may be. But doesn't stop the charge bonus, it stops fight first, which I know is the same thing. That slight wording change, or not including charge bonus, does kind of change how this is used. And because of that, you can use this on heroic intervention. So, because whenever you make a charge, you can then choose to not have fight first, or lose any ability to fight first, or just not be able to gain fight first, and instead get full rerolls of hit and wounds. Now, when you're heroic is a charge move. You don't get the charge bonus specifically, but it is a charge move as long as the enemy unit ends their move within 6 inches of the unit you want to heroically intervene with. And yeah, you have to be within 6 inches, you get to roll your 2d6 charge, but it is a charge move. So anytime you are heroic with a Sinesh unit, always Gambit, because you've not got fight first unless it's a trance weaver with demonettes, which don't do it. Don't use it. It's not good. But like, actually doing a heroic with anything else, always Gambit, because you're not going to have fight first anyway. There's no other ways to get fight first. So specifically just doing this and how you full reroll hits and wounds could also force your opponent to have to draw some now attacks onto that heroically intervening unit, meaning their original target might actually survive, because they're not putting as much into it. So, and the other thing is, because again they've made the original charge, or the charge into the original charge target, they're going to be as many guys or as many of their models in base contact, and then of course around that unit. By heroically intervening to something else, you can keep it far enough away that if you want to keep this safe while it gambits anyway, because it won't be able to hit before the enemy unit does, they're already committed to have to go into the other enemy, or the other first original target, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a really good way to work around it. And it just insanely ups the damage potential of key units like Fiends and Keepers. Keepers obviously notoriously had an issue with punching up, and Keepers are amazing. They're really tough, and they're really good into like mid to low range target. But into like anything that was like T9 and better, they struggled. Though they are not getting so it is full rerolls hit and wound. It means you're rolling those ones on a hit, which happens, is less effective now, or less of an issue. And you're still going to be winning on 5s, though there is a way around that. Full rerolls just massively helps. Now, even if you're hitting those T7, T6, T5, T4, T3, rerolling 2s and 1s is still really good. I've had a keeper just whiff into Marines before because she just rolled too many 1s and 2s and whatever. So yeah, it's really good. And it really opens up a really tactical element to using this, because obviously if you're targeting a vehicle, if you're charging a vehicle like a Rhino or a tank or whatever, then you just gambit, you don't care. They're going to have 3 to 4 maybe attacks at you, generally hitting on 4s. They may take a wound off your fiend, off a fiend, or maybe 2 wounds off a fiend. They might take a wound off a keeper, maybe. Where you do have to think about this is if you're charging into walkers, things like dreadnoughts or stuff like that, or actual damaging units, exalted 8-bound, like chaos, like possessed terminators, etc. Like there are quite a few units out there that can be quite deadly in combat for things like keepers and fiends. And so you don't just want to head on gambit out of nowhere. Now, it doesn't mean you should never gambit in these situations. You've just got to do things to ensure that you're your Gambit unit isn't going to get wiped before they get to do their thing. And there is a stratagem we're going to get into, so I'm not going to talk about it in a moment. That is a good way around it for your non-monsters. But another good way is restricting the amount of attacks that can target the Gambit unit. So, for example, say you want to charge a Fiend into a unit of whatever, and you want to Gambit you want to charge a Keeper into a unit that you want to Gambit. So you charge a Keeper in, then you charge in a unit like Fiends or Demonettes, Seekers, even Chariots. Um, and the idea is you're trying to base contact with as many of the enemy models in that unit as possible, so now they can't move anywhere. And then also force those units that have to pile in towards that unit, because when you pile in, you have to move towards the closest enemy model. And so that will prevent the Gambit unit, or at least restrict the amount of attacks going into a Gambit unit. Because, I don't know, a unit of 10 CSM Terminators, let's just say, or even World Eater Terminators, could do a fair bit of work on a Keeper of Secrets. Forcing just 4 or 5 of them to hit her, now she's got a lot better of a chance of surviving, you know? So, or Custodies are quite horrible as well. So, that'll be something we go more into in part 2, where I really show you how to do it using an actual example and like physical, like example of it. But it is a very strategic. This is why I like it so much, because it requires, in a lot of instances, to be very strategic with it. But then there are those armies where you just don't care. Tau, Guard, pretty much, Votan to an extent. Like, there are armies where you just gambit pretty much most of the time, if not all the time. So, yeah, I think fantastic detachment rules, really strong, especially if you can pull out some of these more advanced tricks to making the most of your gambits. Because, again, just because your opponent might have really good gambit units, really good combat units, doesn't mean you shouldn't gambit into them. You've just got to set yourself up to be in the right position to be able to gambit. So we're going to move on to enhancements, and we've got a few here. So we have 2 30-point aura and enhancements. Speak English, Franco. So the first one is False Majesty. So it's a 30-point aura. You can put it on any Slaanesh model, so character model, obviously. So you can put this on a Contorted Epitome, a Torment Bringer, which we will talk to because I think it is best on a Torment Bringer, or a Keeper of Secrets, a Demon Prince, etc., etc. But this aura does not affect monsters. So while you can put it on a Keeper, it won't affect the Keeper, which is sad. I don't like that they kind of excluded Keepers from this, and Demon Princes, but they did. Oh well. And it is a 6-inch aura of +1 to wound in combat, which is really good. Now, obviously, it doesn't affect Keepers, which again is sad. I really wish it did. But it does affect Fiends, it does affect Seeker Chariots, it does affect Demonettes. Fiends is the big one, to be honest. It does affect Soul Grinders, because they're not monsters, they're vehicles, which I feel like this detachment really benefits Soul Grinders a lot. And I don't know if it's just an oversight, because there's a lot of exclusion of monsters in this detachment when it comes to stratagems and enhancements. But Soul Grinders can still do their thing. So, interesting. That, or it's a sign that Soul Grinders might be going away, which is... So, like I said, while Keepers can't benefit from the enhancement, they are a good carrier of it, because they're very tough. They're -1 to hit, they're T10, they've got a 4-up wind one. They will have a 5-up no pain, because you're going to give them the Shining Aegis. You don't give the dagger, you don't give the whip, always the Shining Aegis, because the 5-up no pain is just too strong. So, Keepers can take a real punch, and because of that, they're a very good target to hold this. They move 14 for a strat, 1 CP, they can go through walls. So they can keep up with everything as well, which is awesome. Now, the Torment Bringer, I think, is actually a really good target of this, because the Torment Bringer already has an aura for sustained hits 6 inches, which is fantastic. And obviously for Slaanesh units, but that will affect Keepers and stuff as well, which is really, really good. They've also got an ability where they pick one of your units that gets targeted by an enemy attack in the fight phase, within 6 inches of it, I believe. And then for the rest of the phase, anytime a model in that unit dies on a 4+, it can fight on death, which is very good in the Fiends, especially 6-man unit of Fiends. So because of that, it's already given up the sustained hits, all right. It already has the pickup unit, which works better on fiends than anything else, really, or demonettes to an extent, and fight on death. So adding this on top of it makes 170 points fairly tough for what it is. They do move 14, so they can keep up with everyone. Like we said with the keeper, can use the 1 CP strat to go through walls if it needs to, or terrain. So just really like just makes it a real big buff piece. It is a lot of eggs in one basket in that case, but it's still good. And I do think if you're going to take a Torment Bringer, then I think False Majesty on it is just really good. Keep it around, you know, the majority of your fiends, and then just go in and kind of just really hammer home into your opponent's lines. Then we have the Dreaming Crown, which is similar in the fact that any of your Sineshi characters can take it, but it doesn't affect monsters, and it is a 6-inch aura, but instead of +1 to wound, it's +1 to hit. Again, copy and paste for the same reasons. It's decent on a keeper because of how tough they are. It's good on a Torment Bringer because of all the buffs they're already giving. I just think it's less valuable. Like, it's still nice for fiends if you're not wanting to do gambit, so you can hit better because you're hitting on 2s. I just, for 30 points, I just think there's a better, like, because I can see 2 keepers being the kind of what you're going to take here, and you might take a Torment Bringer as well, but I think if you're taking a Torment Bringer, False Majesty is better. There is a 10-point enhancement, which we'll get to in a bit, that is very good on the keeper. The next enhancement isn't very good, so you probably won't take it. This is okay, but for 30 points, I think is a bit too much. I would like to see this be 20 points, but it's there if you want to. It's not bad. It's decent enough. If you're taking 2 Torment Bringers, which I don't know if you would, but if you are, 1 with each of these, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. Then we have Avatar Perfection, which I just don't think is very good at all. So 15 points. It only can go on a monster unit, Sineshi monster, so keepers or demon princes. And basically at the start of each phase, if the bearer is not within 6 inches of any of your units, it can re-roll advanced rolls, it can re-roll charge rolls, and it doesn't it ignores all modifiers to move, advance, and charge. So your keeper really wants to be around your other units anyway, you know, because you want to keep your heroic options open, but also the keepers give out an extra point of AP to units within 6 inches. And that's just really, really good, especially on fiends and that and chariots. I just feel like the Avatar Perfection, just it should be so much better. If you're going to take it, you could take it on a Demon Prince, and I think that will be the best use of it because a Demon Prince Wings has no buffing auras. The only abilities they have is either Sustained Hits 1, Lethal, or Precision in combat on themselves, and then once per game at 3 extra attacks. They are moving 14 inches, so being able to ignore modifiers to movement is nice, I guess, and re-rolling charge is okay. There is no advance and charge here, so re-rolling advance rolls feels a bit wasted. It's just not very good. If it was like an addition to advance and charge, or if it gave you advance and charge on the character, and then like a +1 to charge or something, then I think you'd be in business. You would definitely take it. But the way it is, I just don't think it's worth it. If you want to run a Sineshi Demon Prince because you got the model, you really just want to run it, maybe this could be seen on it. Maybe, but there's not that much value in it, to be honest. And then we have Soul Glutton. So I really like Soul Glutton for 10 points. I think is a steal. It's going to go on a keeper. It can only go on a monster, so a prince or a keeper. It's going on a keeper. And essentially, if the keeper kills any units in combat, any models in combat, at the end of the fight phase, she gets to regain D3 wounds. So that's really good. It's really good to recoup some wounds lost when you're performing a gambit. So if you decide to gambit and just take the brunt of the attack to the face first, it now means that, you know, after the end of the fight phase with the gambit, she should kill some models if it's a multi-model unit. And then she can at least recoup some of those wounds she's potentially lost when she got hit. It does play well, like with battle shot. So if it happens, if you're using it or if you're fighting at the end of your opponent's fight phase, if they've charged you in their turn, she's obviously not going to have gambit unless she heroics, but she can hopefully kill some guys, gain D3 wounds back if she's under half strength. Then in your command phase, gain another D3 wounds back if she passes the battle shot test. So it combines quite well there, but just for 10 points. Like, unless you're really, really pressed for points, I just think you take one keeper that's going to cost you 300 points and just be done with it. Because -1 to hit, toughness 10, 18 wounds, 4 up in one, 5 up for no pain, regaining D3 lost wounds every time it kills models in combat, or kills at least one model in combat, and then regaining D3 wounds if it takes a battle shock test. I just think that's super solid. It's really solid. Right. Looking at stratagems, the first one we've got Thieves of Pain. So I think Thieves of Pain is one of the best stratagems available here. I feel like the execution of it is going to be harder than it seems, and I don't think you're going to use it as much as you may think. But in certain circumstances, it's very good. I think it's very good combined with Gambit again. So Thieves of Pain basically, in any phase, after an attack or a mortal wound is allocated to a Slaneshi demon unit. I really like this because it now means that if your opponent tank shocks, you can block this if you want. It can't be used on a monster unit, which is sad. But fiends, chariots, demonettes, soul grinders, it's all fair game. And then so you select that Slanesh unit that was targeted, and then you select one friendly Slanesh unit within 12 inches of the chosen unit, and basically anytime models in that unit take a wound, you convert the wound to a mortal wound and pass it on to the other unit. So basically, if you've got a unit of 6 fiends and then a unit of 10 demonettes, which there is a argument for having 10 demonettes and the contorted epitome, because the contorted epitome, which is the 2 heralds with a mirror, they will give the unit the demonettes are attached to a 4-up for no pain burst and mortal wounds and psychic attacks. So you can have 10 demonettes with a epitome hiding behind a wall within 12 inches of a unit of 6 fiends that's just come out and cleared an objective or something. And then the way it works is they hit and wound against your fiends or the unit you've chosen. You then still make saves with that unit. And then once the damage gets put on them, so if it's just 1 damage and you take like 5 failed saves on a unit of fiends, then that means all 5 of those failed saves will just convert into 5 mortal wounds and pass on to the target unit. In this example, 10 demonettes with a contorted epitome. If it's 2 damage, then again it will, like 3 2 damage attacks will just turn into 6 mortal wounds and pass over. 4-up for no pains, they're going to die, but at least they're going to be able to tank some of it first. Problem is, that's 180 points. A lot of points just to have this unit that will maybe not even take as much as you think it will, to be honest. Especially once the demonettes die, because if the demonettes die before the epitome dies, so if it doesn't all get killed in one activation, the epitome loses the Feel No Pain, because she only gives it when she's attached to a unit. Keepers aren't a bad target for this because they have a 5-up Feel No Pain, but again, do you really want your keeper or seeker just taking stray shots for no reason? Probably not. But where I really think this is good is when you gambit. So if you're charging 6 fiends in, you can then chuck the gambit and maybe throw it on a keeper or demonettes or whatever. And then that way you're taking less damage on that key unit you want to keep around for the gambit. Especially if you're using what we said earlier by tagging up multiple models in that unit, so there's less attacks going into the gambit unit. This then just further restricts how much you're losing. So it's got a really good little combination there with Gambit, but also just in general keeping units safe. If you could use this on the big guys, on Keepers or Shalaxi, then I think this would be insane. So I think maybe restricting it to restricting not being able to target monsters is probably the smart thing. But the fact that you can use this on a Soul Grinder is really good because they have to hit and win the Soul Grinder. So they're hitting on whatever, wounding against toughness 11. You then get your 3-up armor or your 4-up inbun because you still take your saves. It's just whatever wounds you take, then pass on to the selected unit. So quite good. Pretty good. I do like it a lot. Then we have, I always have to say this one slow, Arc Agonists, which is a strat for 5 phases. It's 2 CP, so each of these 4 detachments now all have a 2 CP stratagem, but it is really good. You can select 1 monster unit, so a keeper or Shalaxi, but Shalaxi doesn't need it that much. Or 2 non-monster units. That could be 2 Soul Grinders, it could be 2 units of Fiends, it could be a Soul Grinder and a unit of Fiends, Chariots, etc., etc. And they get +1 to wound in combat. Just really solid. And the fact that you can use this on a keeper and gambit means you can now really have a go at those tanks and stuff. You can use this on, I think, on 6 fiends. If you have 2 units of 6 fiends, popping this on and gambiting on both, that kills so much in the game. It's insane. Yeah, just really, really solid stratagem. Expensive, but really, really good. Then we have Phantasmal Longing, which is the new go through wall strat that all the new detachments got. You know, it's as simple as that. It's great on keepers. It's amazing on Shalaxi because, again, your opponent might just string some cheap move blocking units across terrain pieces, and you just go, cool, I'm just going to go around and go over the terrain. Being able to fall back from combat and then go through a bit of terrain, especially if they kind of trap you in, like they charge you and then surround you so you can't move through them, and the only way you can go backwards is going back into a piece of terrain. That would stick you quite badly. Now just being able to go around through the terrain and back around again is really nice. And being able to rapid ingress Galaxy behind a bit of terrain and then just Kool-Aid manning it through it is just amazing. Um, Also really good for the charge. It means your opponent can't even hide like in areas with terrain because you can just go, cool, they can go straight through it. And you can go twice if you really want to, like in the movement phase and the charge phase, and not just on the same unit, on different units if you want to. So yeah, it's just such a good stratagem to have. It's a really good stratagem to have. It's also not bad on chariots or torment bringer to keep the torment bringer up with fiends or something, or just getting those chariots through walls onto those units holding objectives, going in, especially infantry units, and just tearing them up because they've got their 9 attack, or they've got their 9 demon attacks and their, is it 4 seeker attacks? Which obviously on the charge, all the attacks get anti-infantry 4+. The claw attacks, which is the 9 attacks, devastating wounds, so that's anti-infantry 4+, devastating wounds. And if you gambit, you can reroll and fish for them. So yeah, really, really solid. Then we have Cavalcade Blade. So I like this a lot because it has a really good interaction with Gambit. Again, just so many interactions with the Gambit. So this is a really good stratagem to use for a couple reasons. The reason I like it for Gambit, so let's go through it quickly and then I'll tell you why I like it. So you use it in your charge phase just after a Sineshi unit has made a charge. It's like a mini version of Tank Shock. So if it's a normal unit if it's not a monster, and unfortunately this does include Soul Grinders, you roll a dice for each model in your unit that is in engagement range of the enemy unit, or in engagement. So you select one enemy unit, then you roll a dice for each of your models from your unit that's in engagement range of that enemy unit. On 4+, you cause a mortal wound per 4+. But if it's a monster, you just roll 6 dice, and every 4+ is the mortal, which on average will be 3 mortals. Now, this is really good for a couple reasons. The first one being, if you shoot at a unit, let's just use Terminators as an example. They've got 3 wounds apiece. If you shoot at them with, say, a Keeper and you knock one to a wound, you might kill some, but say you knock one of them to a wound, when you charge the Keeper in or charge something into it, this will work really only on single model units like Keepers, Shalaxi, Soul Grinders, but Keepers and Shalaxi have the better use because of their 6 dice on Cavalcade. You only make it into contact with that wounded model if possible. As long as you are just within engagement range of that unit and you're not within an inch of any other model from the unit, just because of positioning, you can then use this, kill the model with Cavalcade Blades, and because that enemy unit, and then you can gambit, and because that enemy unit didn't make a charge that turn, they can't pile in. But because your unit did make a charge that turn, they can still pile in even if they're not in engagement range of an enemy unit, as long as they can get within engagement range of an enemy unit or onto an objective. So because you'll still more than likely be within 3 inches of that unit, you charge in, use Cavalcade, kill the wounded model, be outside of an inch, gambit, and be safe, and then pile in and hit with your gambit into that unit. So it's really, really good for that. The other thing I like it for is if you've got a dedicated transport on a couple wounds, you charge them with a Keeper, you blow it up. Again, they have to drop out the object within 3 inches of the transport. So that means there is a good chance that they could still be within, because you have to be within 4 inches, or you need a unit within 4 inches of your unit that's piling in to be able to hit it, because combat, like standard engagement range, like model to model, like enemy model to your model, is within an inch. So you get your 3-inch pile in, and then as long as you can land within an inch of an enemy model in a unit, you can hit it. And you don't have to, you can hit what you didn't charge. So that's really good for that. It's also really good for running a monster in, doing cavalcade, killing a 1 or 2 wound transport or 3 wound transport, and then watching something spill out of it and then charge it with another unit like Fiends or Chilaxi or whatever. So, we're quite notoriously we struggle getting like tracking vehicles and getting units that are inside of vehicles. This is a really good way around it. And I just really like it. And it's just another solid stratagem. Then we have the last two. So we have probably the two most interesting ones. So you got sensory excruciation. Now this one's interesting. So you use it in your command phase, and it is just during your command phase, not a specific step of it. You have to have a Slanesh monster on the board. So Keepers, Shalaxi, Demon Prince, Celeste. She is a monster. If you're running Celeste, which we haven't even spoken about Celeste at all in this video. Mainly because I'm not a big fan of Celeste, but she's, if you want to run her in this, you definitely can. She doesn't hate gambits either. And basically every unit that is within your army Shadow of Chaos must take a battle shock test. If that unit is under half strength, they subtract 1 to the test. This does include your own units, but the reason you would do this, there's a couple reasons. If you're going to have a lot of units having to take battle shocks anyway, and they're in your shadows, they're going to get +1. So you cancel out the -1 because that would affect your unit as well. And if you just want to heal as much as you can, it's not a bad way to do it. If you want to get a bunch of demonettes back, because even if you're not at half strength, you've got a unit of like 6 demonettes, and your opponent has 8 OC on there. You use this, boom, you get 2 demonettes back. Now it's your objective again. If your keeper's on 2 wounds, you proc this, keeper back up to, I don't know, 4 wounds, and then you take your battle shock test and you pass it, an extra 2 to 3 wounds. So it's not bad. And again, if your opponent has a lot of units in your Shadow of Chaos, like you've taken the middle in that, you just want to restrict their primary as much as possible, make as many of their units not be able to do actions, not be able to use stratagems. You just go, cool, boom, sensory excruciation. We'll all take battle shock tests. You're going to be at -1 because you're in the shadows. Oh, look, you're under half strength. Now you're at -2. And the other thing that's really good is, like we said with ours, again, this does happen in your command phase. So I was going to say something there, it doesn't actually matter because it happens in your command phase. Actually, it makes no difference because they will just on battle shock in their command phase. So ignore that bit. But again, it will still, actually, don't ignore that because it is still a way to stop your opponent using stratagems on certain units. If your opponent has a unit like near a unit you want to charge, and it's a good combat unit, and they want to basically heroically intervene, if you've got the shadows up, it'll be hard in your command phase. But if you do have the shadows up, or they're within 6 inches of a greater demon, remember that does affect as well. Boom, you proc this, hope that unit fails it, done, right? So there's some good uses to it. Being able to stop your opponent using key stratagems on certain units, being able to get more guys back into an objective to flip an objective, being able to just get as much healing on your units as possible. So it's not one you're going to use a lot, but in those really niche situations, it could definitely come in handy and be really useful. And then last one, we've got the overwhelming excess, which is really funny. I really like this stratagem. Me and Byron both think this is Shalaxi's stratagem, but this is still good on Fiends. It's still good on Keepers. So in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, but obviously before it's shot, so you know what what's being targeted. It does only work for this unit's activation, so you can't use it for the whole phase. You do pick one of your Slanesh demon units that was targeted by that unit. And then the attacking unit then has to take a battle shock test, and they will be at -1. Now, if they're in your Shadow of Chaos, they're going to be at -2. If they're within 6 inches of a keeper or Shalaxi, -2. Like, you get it. Which is why this is really good on melty units that want to get close, like fusion battle suits, eradicators, anything that needs to get in close to do like 6-inch melter. This is really good on. Now, what I also love about this, it isn't just your opponent takes battle shock dice. If they're passed, they're fine. If they fail, they take negatives. It's they will always be -1. So basically, now Shalaxi gains -1 to hit. The Fiends gain -1 to hit. Whatever. If you're using it on a keeper, she'll gain -1 in addition to her normal -1. So if the enemy unit has +1 to hit from like, I don't know, an ability like the Farseer with Guide or Spotting for Tau, where they get a +1 to hit, this will cancel that out, and then the keeper's natural -1 to hit will then take into effect, so the unit will still be -1 to hit, which is really good. It's really good. Now, if the opponent fails the battle shock test, that unit that failed the battle shock test cannot target the unit they targeted. So let's say it's a Vindicator or one of the big Tau tanks with the big railgun on top, Hammerhead, or even a Knight, an Imperial Knight. It targets Shalaxi. You use this. Maybe they're not in your shadows, but it's still going to be at -1. They pass it, cool. They're on -1 to hit. If they fail it, cool. They can no longer target Shalaxi. They do get to retarget a new unit, which is fine. It should work like that. It shouldn't just be feels bad of boom, you just lose your target. But if it's a unit that's like got a 12-inch range, it's let's say a melter unit, and the only unit they've set up to shoot is say Shalaxi, and you use this, well, if they fail it, they can't target Shalaxi now, and they've got no other target. Just really good. So some very good defensive stratagems here. I think overall with Excess it's the best one, but it's situational, but it's one you're probably going to use. I can see myself using this most games. It's really good against Tau. It's really good against Imperial Guard. It's really good against Votan. It's got uses against Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines. Yeah, and other armies as well, but they're like some of the real key ones. Yeah, it's really, really good. So finally, we're just going to look at some of the key units. We've got Keepers of Secrets. I think you're always taking Keepers. I think 2 Keepers is a nice spot. Maybe triple. You could run triple Keepers, but I still think Shalaxi has a place. Just because, while yes, you can Gambit, yes, you can get +1 to wound for a stratagem, Shalaxi is still a missile that will kill most things in the game. And yes, she doesn't benefit massively from Gambits, but Gambits does give her an option into those units she did struggle with. And she's just really, really good. She does love fallback and charge. She does love going through walls. So she does benefit from some stuff in the detachment, which is awesome. But yeah, keepers with the Majesty or the Crown or Soul Glutton. I think Soul Glutton, I think 2 keepers is good. And I think one of them always has Soul Glutton. The other one maybe Majesty. So really good options there. Shalaxi, as we said, is fantastic anyway. She loves this detachment. Contorted to pick me in 10 Demonettes. I don't know if I'm fully sold on it, but the option's there to do it. 6 Chariots I think are fantastic for 65 points. You know, toughen 6, 7 wounds, flop in run, move 14 inches, good for doing actions, good for going into small infantry units or even bigger infantry units and just doing a fair bit of mortals, especially if they manage to Gambit. The Mask is fantastic, being able to give, kick an enemy unit within 6 inches of in the fight phase, give any of your Slanesh units a target +1 to wound and make that enemy unit -1 to wound. Again, she's really good to restrict the Gambit punchback. So having her nearby, so you've got 6 Fiends go into a unit and want a Gambit, she can make it -1 to wound. So they're -1 to hit because of Fiends, -1 because of the Mask. She gives them +1 to, on the Fiends, will give them +1 to wound, or Keepers +1 to wound. Just really, really solid. She's a lone up as well. She moves 9 inches. She can advance and charge. So, and I think she has fight first. So if she wants to Gambit, she will lose that. Fine. But yeah, so, and she just adds so much. You can use her early game to do actions like recover or sabotage, and have to force your opponent to either get close or just ignore her. And then Fiends, 6-man units of Fiends, 3-man's unit of Fiends, they're all good. I think a 6-man and 2 3-mans is still quite nice because the 2 3-mans can go off, do a bit of actions if they need to, but also just bully and contest objectives. 6-man can be used as a hammer unit, which is really nice. And then, some non-Slanesh units, Plague Bearers. I think I said this in the Scintillating Legion deep dive. Every detachment wants Plague Bearers because they're just solid. They sit on the backfield, they're T5 2 wounds, fire up in run. They give you natural sticky, which is really, really good for your backfield. And then they can go up the board mid to late game and start doing that into the middle of the board as well. If your opponent has nowhere to get to the back foot objective, if you don't need to score your back foot objective, there are some games, some missions where you just don't need your back foot objective. You can start them in the middle and move them forward. You can deep strike them down, whatever. Nailguns are not bad to give you another source of -1 hit and an aura in combat, but also some like being able to counter other infiltrators and scout moves. Streamers, they move 14, they're beasts, they're very good for actions. They can actually punch more now, hitting on threes with 3 attacks, strength 6 -2 damage, anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4+, really solid. And then Beast and Urgle, we all love a beast. T9, 7 wounds, 5 weapon 1, regain wounds back to full if they're wounded but not dead, and using them to just for 65 points drop down and do actions while the rest of your selection stuff's kind of smashing into the enemy lines is really good. So, yeah, overall, I really, really love this detachment. I do think it is outright the most powerful one out of the new detachments. I still don't think it's as good as Incursion. I just think Incursion is far too good. But it's close. It is very close. I think it's infinitely more powerful than the Corn one. I'm not the biggest fan of the Corn one, but if you know me, if you know the channel, and if you follow me long enough, you'll know my feelings. I'm not a big Corn fan. Maybe smartly and unfairly, but and as much as I do love the Scintillating Legion, and I actually do like the Plague Legion, I think it's got a lot of play. I think it gets spat on a bit too much by people. This is just outright more powerful, as you can see from some of the stratagems, really strong. The Detachment rules, really strong. Slanesh has some of the stronger units. Keepers, Fiends, Shalaxi, the Mask, Seeker Chariots are all pretty strong units anyway, and they just get better in this detachment. Yes, no 6-inch deep strike, it hurts. No uppy downy, it hurts, but you are really fast, really mobile anyway, so you can get around it. So yeah, if you want to see me actually demonstrate how to use some of the things I spoke about in this video, like the gambits, using overwhelming excess, or cavalcade of blades or stuff like that, or thieves of pain, with actual demonstrations, then consider becoming a member. Check out part 2 of the Legion of Excess. I hate the names. I wish it was just like Pleasure Legion or something, or Pleasure Host. Why did it have to be Legion of Excess? There's too many words to say in one go. Then yeah, check that out. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all in the next one.